There comes a moment in every man's life when the world takes one slow step backward, and the noise that once surrounded him falls into a silence so sharp it feels like a blade tracing the spine. This moment is never announced. It arrives in the quiet hours, in the unseen defeats, in the subtle shift when familiar hands let go and you realize the ground beneath your feet is no longer shared. Musashi felt this before every duel, that ancient hush before steel kissed the wind. It wasn't loneliness, it was clarity, a heavy, almost sacred recognition that the next breath, the next movement, the next decision belonged to him alone. And in that realization, something primal awakens. A warrior steps forward, not because he is ready, but because stepping back is no longer an option. In the modern world, men confuse this silence with abandonment. They call it loneliness, as if the universe suddenly forgot their name. But warrior solitude is different. It doesn't drain you, it reveals you. It strips away the audience, the expectations, the comfortable illusions of togetherness you once leaned on like crutches. You begin to see how much of your strength was borrowed, how much of your confidence was dependent on eyes watching you. This realization stings, and it is supposed to. The pain is the doorway. There is a turning point where you stop looking for someone to blame for the distance between you and the world. You stop hoping someone will return, fix the gaps, carry half the weight. There is a moment where you finally understand that no one is coming to save you. Not because people are cruel, but because this is your rite of passage, carved into the architecture of being human. The dojo empties, the footsteps echo, and you are left with only your breath, your shadow, and the quiet decision of what kind of man you will become. Standing alone is not a punishment, it is initiation. The world steps back so you can step inward, into the cold chamber where real identity is forged. Musashi walked into that emptiness before every battle. Now it is your turn. When the doors finally close behind you and the world's voices fade into a distant hum, you feel the true weight of carrying yourself. Musashi once said, "Rely on nothing that cannot be carried on your back." He wasn't speaking about tools or possessions. He was speaking about identity, about building a foundation that cannot be taken, altered, or shaken by another human being. But modern men have forgotten this creed. They rely on applause, on constant noise, on glowing screens that feed them borrowed courage. They build identities from reflections instead of stone, and when the reflections disappear, they collapse. Being your own fortress is not poetic, it is pressure. It is standing upright in a storm with no walls behind you. It means becoming your own compass when directions blur, your own judge when the world refuses to guide you, your own anchor when everything shifts. This is the kind of burden that reveals cracks in your character, not to shame you, but to show you what must be rebuilt. You begin to feel the architecture of your inner self, the parts shaped by fear, the parts shaped by laziness, the parts shaped by the opinions of small people you never should have listened to. And beneath all of it, you find the raw stone waiting to be carved. Solitude exposes this structure the way winter exposes a mountain. Every flaw becomes visible, every weakness is tested. Yet this is how the lone mountain endures, not by fighting the seasons, but by letting each one sculpt its surface. Wind sharpens its edges. Snow toughens its slopes. Heat cracks its outer layers, revealing stronger layers beneath. Musashi lived the same way, letting the seasons of his life carve him into something unbreakable. Pressure is not your enemy. It is the chisel in the hand of fate. When you stand alone long enough, you begin to understand that the weight you feel is not meant to crush you. It is meant to shape you. Like stone cut by wind, you become something the world can no longer move. The fortress you build alone is not a prison. It is the one structure in your life that no one else can destroy. There is a fire inside. Every man that waits for solitude like dry wood waits for a spark. Musashi knew this fire well. His training was not fueled by praise or witnesses. It was fueled by a quiet, relentless promise he made to himself in the dark. He trained when no one watched. He sharpened his blades out of sight. He practiced strokes that no one would ever know he mastered. This is the fire that does not ask permission, the kind that grows under pressure, away from applause, unseen by the world. Modern men want witnesses. They want someone to confirm their effort, bless their progress, congratulate their smallest steps, and in that dependency, their fire flickers. But solitude kills this need. When you show up alone, when there is no audience, when the room is silent except for the sound of your breathing, something sacred happens. The pain of continuing becomes your teacher. The quiet becomes your ally. You begin to realize that the flame you're tending is meant for warmth, not display. There is a moment it comes without warning, when you feel yourself tending a small flame in a storm. Everyone else waits for sunrise, hoping the world will light their path. But you crouch down, shielding your flicker of fire from the wind, feeding it with discipline, protecting it with intention. It is in that moment you understand the difference between men who endure and men who vanish. Fire born alone burns the longest. It does not depend on weather. It does not rely on spectators. It grows from the inside out, fueled by the decision to keep burning, even when the world is cold. The fire within you does not need permission to exist. It needs commitment. It needs a man willing to stand in the rain, in the wind, in the silence, and light himself from within. There is a certain ache that comes without growing people, a slow, quiet grief that feels like walking through a forest where familiar voices fade into the distance. Musashi knew this feeling intimately. He walked away from teachers, from schools, from comfortable attachments that limited his path. Not because he lacked loyalty, but because growth demanded separation. To sharpen his own blade, he had to step beyond the reach of others. You will feel this at some point on your path. Allies you once depended on will become echoes. Their presence will linger, but their influence will fade. You may reach back for them emotionally, hoping the bond will hold, but all you'll grasp is memory. This is not abandonment. This is evolution. The terrain changes, and not everyone can follow. There is psychological grief in this transition, the mourning of past identities, past friendships, past versions of yourself that no longer survive in the light of who you are becoming. You will feel guilt. You will feel confusion. You will wonder if growth is worth the cost. But ask yourself, would you rather remain comfortable in a room where you no longer fit, or step into new terrain where your spine must straighten to survive? Musashi chose the wilderness of self-mastery over the comfort of belonging, and so must you. The forest ahead is quieter, but it is where you find your path without interference. Not all echoes are meant to return. Some fade because they have already given you everything they were meant to. Their departure is not a wound. It is a sign that you are walking deeper into the life you were meant to live. There is a particular road a man walks when he chooses solitude over noise. It is not paved by encouragement or softened by guidance. It is a narrow, unlit path where the ground is uneven and every step feels heavier than the last. But it is here, on this road, that the spine begins to strengthen. Musashi walked this way, not because he sought suffering, but because he understood that the warrior who trains with solitude as his partner emerges with a different kind of strength. When you spend enough time alone, the mind begins to speak in a language most men never learn. You confront your fears without distraction. You hear your doubts without distortion. You face the version of yourself you've been avoiding. These internal dialogues reshape you. They strip away the false layers built from social expectations and carve out the man you actually are. And in that carving, a new identity forms, one born not from society, but from truth. Modern life offers infinite ways to escape this confrontation. Screens, noise, entertainment, shallow conversations, endless stimulation. All of it serves as a shield against the self, but the ancient warrior had no such shield. Musashi met himself in the quiet, again and again, until the internal distance between who he was and who he wanted to become finally closed. Think of yourself as steel in the hands of a blacksmith. Each solitary moment is a hammer strike. Each internal confrontation is heat. Each challenge along the lonely road is a reminder that you are being refined. And as the steel heats and bends, it stops complaining. It stops resisting. It accepts the transformation. In time, the quiet dignity of self-created momentum rises within you. You walk not to prove anything, not to impress anyone, but because the road itself refines you. Solitude becomes not an exile, but a training ground. And the man who emerges at the end of this road carries a spine forged in silence. Every warrior breaks. Even Musashi cracked under the weight of certain battles, certain failures, certain inner storms that never made it into his legends. What separated him from lesser men was not invincibility, but resilience. He learned the difference between breaking and shattering. Breaking is a moment. Shattering is a surrender. There will be nights when your strength slips, when the silence feels too heavy, when the path feels too long. You will feel yourself bending under the weight of uncertainty, doubt, and exhaustion. These moments do not make you weak. They make you human. Musashi had them. Every man of substance has them. What matters is what happens after the crack. A man rebuilds himself in the dark, not with motivation, not with external support, but with a small, quiet decision to rise again. Resilience is not a hard shell. Hard shells snap. True resilience is flexible, like bamboo bending in the storm while iron breaks. This is why the warrior survives. Not because he is unbreakable, but because he refuses to remain broken. You must understand that vulnerability is not the absence of strength. It is part of the warrior's spine. The moments when you feel yourself cracking are the same moments that create expansion. They teach you where your limits are, and then they ask you to move beyond them. Pain becomes a map. Weakness becomes a teacher. Silence becomes a forge. Breaking is allowed. Shattering is not. Stand in the dark, feel the crack, breathe, and rebuild. At the end of his life, Musashi walked the world without companions, without applause, without the need for anyone to confirm his worth. He wrote, he wandered, he taught, he sharpened the final edges of his spirit. He mastered the art of being alone, not as a rejection of humanity, but as a homecoming to himself. This is the quiet authority of the unaccompanied man. In a world that screams for attention, a man who does not need noise becomes dangerous. In a society addicted to constant feedback, a man who relies only on his own judgment becomes rare. And in a culture desperate for validation, a man who walks with his own shadow as his only witness becomes unshakable. Solitude is not exile. It is a return to the self. It is the place where your thoughts sharpen, your heart steadies, your intentions align. It is where the fog of other people's influence finally clears, revealing the path meant only for you. The world may never understand this kind of strength, but you will feel it in the way you breathe, in the way you stand, in the way your presence fills a room with calm instead of noise. Imagine a single lantern lighting an entire path. It doesn't flicker for attention. It doesn't need to outshine the sun. It burns steadily, quietly, because that is its nature. This is the power of a man who stands alone without breaking. Do not walk alone to be harder. Walk alone to be whole. And when the world steps back, step forward.